The backyard was perfect. I'd spent 3 days stringing lights between the oak trees, setting up tables with white linens, and arranging the photo collages that chronicled Emma's 18 years. The smell of barbecue drifted from the grill where my brother Mike was handling the burgers, and the sound of laughter filled the warm June evening. Extended family, friends, teachers, and neighbors had all come to celebrate Emma's graduation from high school. I stood by the dessert table, watching my daughter move through the crowd in her white sundress, her graduation cap perched at a jaunty angle on her dark curls. She'd inherited those curls from me, along with my stubborn streak and my tendency to speak before thinking. At 18, she was radiant with the confidence that comes from being loved and supported, ready to take on the world with her acceptance to State University in the fall. "Dad, you really outdid yourself," Emma said, appearing at my elbow with a plate full of her grandmother's famous potato salad. "This is amazing." I smiled, feeling that familiar warmth that came from her calling me Dad. It hadn't always been that way. When I'd first started dating her mother, Sarah, 7 years ago, Emma had been a guarded 11-year-old who called me Mark with polite distance. Her biological father, David, had left when she was 5, moving across the country and gradually fading from regular contact to birthday cards to eventual silence. "Your mom did most of the planning," I said, nodding toward Sarah, who was deep in conversation with Emma's guidance counselor. "I just provided the muscle for setup." Emma laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "Right. And I suppose Mom was the one who drove to 3 different party stores to find the exact shade of gold balloons to match my school colors?" I shrugged, caught. Sarah had indeed told her about my balloon quest. "Gold is gold," I said, but I was smiling. As the evening progressed, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. When I'd married Sarah 4 years ago, I knew I was gaining not just a wife, but a daughter. Emma had been skeptical at first, testing boundaries and watching to see if I would stick around like her father hadn't. But gradually, through homework help, driving lessons, father-daughter dances, and late-night conversations about boys and college dreams, we'd built something real. I'd never tried to replace David. That wasn't my place, and I respected that Emma had another father, even if he was absent. But I'd tried to be present in every way that mattered. Soccer games, piano recitals, parent-teacher conferences, midnight, runs to the emergency room when she broke her wrist skateboarding. I'd been there, not because I had to be, but because I wanted to be. The sun was setting, casting golden light through the trees, when Sarah clinked her glass with a fork to get everyone's attention. "If I could have everyone gather around," she called out, "Emma has something she'd like to say." Emma climbed onto one of the patio chairs, her cheeks flushed with excitement, and perhaps a touch of wine from the glass she'd been nursing. The crowd quieted, faces turning toward her expectantly. She looked beautiful up there, poised on the threshold between childhood and adulthood, surrounded by all the people who loved her. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. "This has been such an amazing celebration, and I'm so grateful for all of you. I know graduation speeches are supposed to be about looking forward to the future, but I wanted to take a minute to look back and thank the people who got me here." She turned to look at Sarah. "Mom, you're my hero. You've worked so hard to give me everything I needed, and you never complained, even when I was being a total teenager." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Sarah wiped at her eyes. Then Emma's gaze found mine, and she smiled. "And Mark, Dad, I don't even know where to start. You came into our lives when I was this angry, scared kid who didn't want to let anyone else in. But you never gave up on me. You showed up for everything, and I mean everything. You taught me to drive, even though I nearly gave you a heart attack in that parking lot. You helped me with calculus, even though we both know you had to relearn it first." The crowd chuckled, and I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't what I'd expected when Sarah had said Emma wanted to make a speech. Emma's voice grew stronger, more determined. "My stepdad bought me a car for graduation. She gestured toward the driveway where my surprise gift, a reliable used Honda Civic, sat with a giant red bow. My real dad never even sent a card. The silence that followed was profound. I could feel the eyes of 60 people on me, but all I could see was Emma, standing there with tears streaming down her face, speaking a truth that hung in the air like a bell that had been rung. "But the thing is," she continued, her voice wavering but determined, "Mark is my real dad. He's been my real dad for years now. Biology doesn't make you a father. Being there does. Loving someone enough to show up day after day, that's what makes you real." The guests began to disperse around 10 o'clock, but the echo of Emma's words seemed to hang in the air long after the last car pulled out of the driveway. I helped Sarah clear the tables in contemplative silence, both of us processing what had happened. Emma had disappeared into the house shortly after her speech, overwhelmed by the emotions she'd unleashed and the responses from relatives and friends who'd been moved to tears by her declaration. "I should go check on her," Sarah said, loading the last of the glasses into the dishwasher. Her voice was soft, worried in the way only a mother's could be. "Let me," I said, surprising us both. "I think maybe she needs to talk to me." Sarah nodded, understanding passing between us. We'd navigated enough parenting challenges together to trust each other's instincts about Emma's needs. I found Emma on her bed, still in her white sundress but with the graduation cap discarded on her desk. She was staring at her phone, and I could see the telltale signs that she'd been crying, puffy eyes, streaked mascara she'd tried to wipe away. "Can I come in?" I asked from the doorway. She looked up and nodded, scooting over to make room on the bed. I sat down carefully, the mattress dipping under my weight. For a moment, we sat in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sounds of Sarah finishing the cleanup downstairs. "I've been thinking about what I said out there," Emma finally spoke, her voice hoarse from emotion. "I don't know if I should have said it like that in front of everyone." "Do you regret saying it?" I asked carefully. Emma considered this, twirling a curl around her finger, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret saying it. I regret that it took me so long to say it, and I regret that saying it felt like I was betraying him somehow, even though he's the one who left." I felt something crack open in my chest. "Emma, you don't owe David anything. Not your loyalty, not your silence, and certainly not your gratitude. You were a child when he left. That was his choice, not yours." "But he's still my biological father," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "And I used to think that meant something important. I used to think that someday he'd come back and we'd have this relationship, you know? Like in the movies where the absent parent shows up and explains everything and suddenly it all makes sense." She showed me her phone screen, and I saw a text, thread with a contact labeled David. My heart sank as I realized what this meant. "He texted you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Emma nodded miserably. "About an hour ago. Someone must have posted about the party on social media, and he saw it. He says he wants to talk, that he's been meaning to reach out. He says he's proud of me and wants to be part of my life again." The text was brief, casual in a way that made my jaw clench. "Hey, Em, saw the graduation pics on your aunt's Facebook. Congrats! We should catch up soon. I'm proud of you, kiddo." After 13 years of silence, this was what he offered. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of the pain his absence had caused. Just a breezy suggestion that they catch up, as if he'd been busy for a weekend instead of missing her entire childhood. "What do you want to do?" I asked, though every protective instinct in my body was screaming at me to tell her to delete his number and block him on every platform. "I don't know," Emma whispered. "Part of me wants to ignore him completely, but part of me is curious, you know? I want to know why he left. I want to know if he ever thought about me. I want to know if he's sorry." I chose my words carefully, knowing that whatever I said now would matter. Those are all natural things, to want to know. And you're an adult now. You get to decide if and how you want to handle this. But Emma, I want you to think about what you're hoping to get from him, and whether those expectations are realistic. She looked at me with eyes that seemed older than her 18 years. You think he'll disappoint me again? I think people who are capable of walking away from their children once are capable of doing it again, I said gently. And I think you've built a beautiful life with people who love you and show up for you consistently. I don't want to see you hurt by someone who's proven unreliable. Emma was quiet for a long time, staring at the phone in her hands. When I was little, after he first left, I used to pretend you were my real dad, she said suddenly. Before you were even with Mom, when you were just her friend who came around sometimes. You'd help me with my science fair projects or fix my bike chain, and I'd pretend that you were my dad and that you lived with us. My throat tightened. I'd had no idea. When Mom started dating you for real, I was so scared you'd leave too. I kept waiting for you to get tired of us and disappear. I was mean to you sometimes, testing you. Remember when I told you I hated you because you wouldn't let me go to that party at Jessica's house? I remembered. She'd been 14, and Jessica's party had been unsupervised with older kids and alcohol. It had been one of our first real conflicts, and Emma had been furious at my parental authority. You grounded me, and I screamed that you weren't my real father and couldn't tell me what to do, she continued. And you just stood there and took it. Then later, you came to my room and said that whether or not I considered you my father, you considered me your daughter, and daughters don't go to parties where they might not be safe. I smiled, remembering that conversation. You told me that real fathers don't abandon their kids, so maybe the problem wasn't with you accepting me as your dad, but with David not understanding what being a father really meant. I was a smart kid, Emma said with a watery laugh. You were. And you're a smart adult now, too. Smart enough to know the difference between someone who shows up and someone who doesn't. Emma looked at her phone again, then deliberately set it face down on the nightstand. I might answer him eventually, she said. But not tonight. Tonight I just want to be grateful for the dad I actually have. She leaned against my shoulder and I wrapped my arms around her, thinking about the long journey that had brought us to this moment. In the morning, we'd face whatever came next together, but for now, this was enough. 3 weeks later, I stood in the parking lot of a coffee shop 20 minutes from home, watching through the window as Emma sat across from a man I hadn't seen in person for over 7 years. David looked older than I'd expected, his dark hair now streaked with gray, wearing a polo shirt and khakis that seemed chosen to present a respectable image. He was gesturing as he talked, and I could see Emma listening with that polite attention she used when she was trying to be diplomatic but wasn't entirely engaged. I wasn't supposed to be there. Emma had asked to handle this meeting on her own, wanting to maintain some independence in her decision to finally respond to David's messages. But I'd driven her there and promised to stay nearby just in case, so I sat in my car with a book I wasn't reading, occasionally glancing up to check on her through the window. The meeting had been planned for an hour. They'd been talking for 35 minutes, and I could see Emma's body language shifting from cautious openness to polite distance. Whatever David was saying wasn't landing the way he probably hoped it would. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Can you come in? I think I'm ready to go. I found them at a corner table, Emma sitting straight-backed with her hands folded, David leaning forward earnestly. When I approached, David looked up with an expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise, perhaps, or discomfort at being interrupted. Mark, he said, standing up and extending a hand. Good to see you. I shook his hand briefly. David. Then, I looked at Emma. Ready to go? She nodded, gathering her purse. Thank you for meeting with me, she said to David, her tone polite but final. I'm glad we had a chance to talk. David's face fell slightly. Emma, wait. We've barely had time to catch up. I was hoping we could talk about maybe spending some time together this summer before you go off to college." Emma paused, and I could see her choosing her words carefully. "I appreciate the offer, but I have a pretty full summer planned. I'm working at the community center camp, and Mark and I are doing a college prep road trip in August." "A road trip?" David's eyes flicked between Emma and me. "That sounds like something a father and daughter would do together." The comment hung in the air, and I felt Emma tense beside me. This was her moment to handle, and I waited to see how she'd respond. "It is," Emma said simply. "Mark and I are driving to my college to get me settled in my dorm and see the campus. We've been planning it for months." David's expression shifted, and I could see him processing the implications. "Emma, I know I haven't been around much, but I'm here now. I want to be part of your life. I want to help you with college, maybe contribute to your expenses." "That's very generous," Emma interrupted. "But my college expenses are already handled. Mark set up a college fund for me when I was 14, and Mom and he have been contributing to it for years. Plus, I have academic scholarships." I could see David deflating as the reality of his absence became clear. He'd missed not just the milestones and memories, but the practical day-to-day work of parenting, the planning, the saving, the preparation for Emma's future. "I see," he said quietly. "And I suppose you have everything figured out for your career, too?" Emma's voice grew stronger, more confident. "Actually, yes. I'm majoring in education with a minor in nonprofit management. I want to work with underserved communities, maybe start an after-school program someday. Mark's been helping me research programs and connect with people in the field." As we walked to the parking lot, David trailing slightly behind, he made one last attempt. "Emma, I know I made mistakes. I was young when you were born, and I wasn't ready to be a father. But I've grown up now. I've changed." Emma stopped walking and turned to face him. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to wonder why her daddy didn't want to be around anymore. But then I saw the young woman she'd become, strong, clear-eyed, and secure in her worth. "David, I'm glad you've grown up," she said. "And I'm glad you reached out, but I want you to understand something. I didn't need you to be ready to be my father. I needed you to grow into it, the way all parents do. Mark wasn't ready to be a father to a teenage girl when he met me either. But he didn't run away from the challenge. He rose to meet it." She paused, and I could see her gathering her thoughts. "I don't hate you, and I'm not angry anymore. But I also don't need you to be my father now. I already have one. What I needed from you, I needed 13 years ago. I needed you at my elementary school plays and my soccer games. I needed you to help me with my homework and teach me to drive. I needed you when I had my first heartbreak and when I was choosing colleges." David's face crumpled slightly. "Emma, I'm not saying we can't have a relationship," Emma continued. "But it would be a different kind of relationship. We're not father and daughter in any way that really matters. We're just two people who share some DNA and some history. And that's okay. But let's not pretend it's more than it is." The drive home was quiet. Emma stared out the passenger window, processing the conversation she'd just had. I wanted to tell her how proud I was of the way she'd handled herself, but I sensed she needed space to work through her feelings. Finally, as we pulled into our driveway, Emma spoke. "He offered to pay for a car," she said. "Said he wanted to get me something nice for graduation." "How did that make you feel?" I asked. Emma smiled ruefully, like he thought he could buy his way back into being important to me. I told him I already had a car from my dad, and that what made it special wasn't how much it cost, but that it came from someone who knew exactly what kind of car I needed, because he'd been teaching me to drive for 2 years. We sat in the driveway for a moment longer, the engine ticking as it cooled. "Mark?" Emma said. "Yeah? Thank you for letting me handle that on my own, but also for being there in case I needed you. That's very dad-like behavior." I laughed. "Well, I've had a pretty good teacher. You've taught me a lot about being a father, Emma. Really? Really. You taught me that love isn't about biology or perfection or having all the answers. It's about showing up every day and choosing to be present in someone's life. You taught me that being a parent means being willing to grow and change and sometimes mess up as long as you're always trying to do better. Emma wiped her eyes. I'm really glad Mom married you. Me too, I said. Best decision she ever made, except maybe having you. As we walked toward the house, Emma linked her arm through mine. So, about that college road trip. Think we can make it educational? Maybe visit some historical sites along the way. Absolutely, I said. Though I should warn you, I'm going to want to stop at every roadside attraction between here and your college. Emma laughed. Deal. But only if you promise not to embarrass me when we meet my roommate. I make no such promises, I said, and she laughed again, the sound bright with possibility and the security of knowing she was loved. Inside, Sarah was waiting with dinner and questions about how the meeting had gone. As Emma recounted the conversation, I marveled at the young woman she'd become, confident, compassionate, and clear about her values. Tomorrow she would text David to suggest they might occasionally exchange messages about her college experiences, but she would make it clear that their relationship would be on her terms. In August, Emma and I would take our road trip, stopping at Civil War battlefields and quirky museums, talking about life and dreams and the future stretching out before her. We'd move her into her dorm room together, and I'd cry a little when it was time to leave her there, because that's what fathers do when their daughters take their next big step into the world. But tonight, she was still ours, still home, still the little girl who'd taught me that the most important things in life, love, loyalty, family, are built one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of showing up at a time. And that was more than enough. That was everything.